All right, thank you, Wendy. We're running a little bit late, so we're going to get right to our next guest. He's been with us every once in a while. He pops in, he pops out, he talks to us about different things with money and finances. And today we're going to talk a little bit about fraud. Anthony D'Angelo from Fortress Fiduciary Company. Anthony, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Lee, I'm fine, and good morning to everyone.
All right, so today we're talking about fraud?
Yeah, and this is something that, we've talked about some great conceptual things, and today I thought I would really bring it down to something that affects us all. A lot of wolves out there in sheep's clothing, and we really need to pay attention to what's taking place here, especially in the arena of money and finance and things like that. It's absolutely unbelievable.
All right, so what do we got? What do people need to look out for here?
Okay, just a couple of things. There's been a recent fraud. This is a gentleman. I can't really dignify him by calling him that. His name is Luckner Stimpill in Florida. Now, if you get this, this is one of the hallmarks. He's a pastor of a church, or was a pastor of a church. He and his daughter are preparing false tax returns for 4 years of the people in the congregation. They're getting all kinds of breaks. They think everything's wonderful. This man is anointed from God. It's just on and on and on and on. $11 million is the amount of the fraud. Now, that's the calculated fraud. He's sentenced to 4 years. Go back a couple of years before that, there was a gentleman, again, I'm using that term very loosely, his name, Ephraim Taylor. Now, he was a black man, or is a black man, got people involved in doing, shall we say, socially conscious investments. He took $16 million and put it into something called self-directed IRAs. If somebody approaches you with that, folks, be very, very, very careful. As a matter of fact, you're better off running. And it was absolutely incredible, finally got caught up with. Of course, the biggest one that we all know about is Bernie Madoff. Bernie took anywhere between $20 and $60 billion. That's right, with a B. Bernie, of course, was Jewish. The biggest thing that I really want to say here in all of this, Lee, is this is something called affinity fraud. In other words, I am like you. I'm the same as you. I'm here to help you. The only I know, that if I'm the fraudster, that I know how to beat the market. Only I've got the system. I will digest it for you. You can trust me, and everything's going to be wonderful. And I just want to caution folks out there that if they are approached with something like this, don't walk in the other direction. Please run.
All right. Again, these things happen so often now. In particular, I mean, do you see it happening more with elderly folks? Do you see it happening more with younger people who are sort
all
of not
over the board? I mean, elder fraud is another subject for another day. Believe me, we could get into that. But the thread is it happens with everyone, primarily in groups, and it's the power of affinity. I was doing the lawn on Sunday, and I was thinking about my late Uncle Mike, who was a gentleman much like my father. No education, but read every single thing, including the labels on poison bottles.
Right.
Just a great example. And one day he told me when I was a little boy, he said, and this is the power of affinity, he said, Anthony, as he called me, you need to marry an Italian girl. Why, Uncle Mike? Why do I need to marry an Italian girl? Because this way, when you're fighting, you won't get into ethnic insults. And it's the thing of, I've been married twice. My first wife died in 2011. Believe me, Lee, it's gotten to some incredible things, as it might be with a lot of marriage. But ethnic insults, it never degenerated to that. But it's the power of affinity. If you're like me, you're not going to hurt me.
Interesting. It's really an amazing concept. So they bring themselves down to you, or you get elevated to them, and they swindle you.
Exactly. And another thing, as far as, investments and choosing professionals, and I can beat the market and I can walk on water, folks need to ask themselves something. If I buy this thing, can I sell it to someone else? Because that indicates its true worth. Many years ago, when I was poking through house catalogs in the New Haven Savings Bank lunchroom, one of the senior VPs walked up to me and pointed to a house and said, "Tony, how much is that house worth?" I said, "Well, Carl, it's, $500,000. I can't afford it." Says, no, but if you went to buy that house today, or if that person needed to sell it today, what could they get? I said, well, they couldn't sell it today. And he pointed at me and he said, that's right. That house is worth absolutely nothing. It's the buy window theory of life. So if you can't sell something readily, no matter what it is, it's really worthless.
You know, it's interesting, too. I always hear this from different people can come out and say the same kinds of things, different walks of life. But in particular, when it comes to money and stocks and finances, you know, Tony, if they can do it, like if they're a sure thing, 100% of the time they're making money, they're making 60% on every investment or 70% on every investment. Why the heck do they need me, right? Why don't they just why do they need my paltry $15,000, $10,000? If they're constantly beating the market, they'd be billionaires, wouldn't they?
Well, sure. And the thing is, and the sad thing is, they need you because they need your dollars to pay off the guy at the top.
Sure. Sure, you're right. No, I get it. But I'm saying, as far as people out there, if it's too good to be true, it is.
Oh, it is. It most certainly is. And it's. I mean, how could I put it? Nobody bats 1,000. Nobody steals 50 bases a year. And regardless of what you are told, anything has a downside risk. And when people start crossing over the line, trying to be all things like this, again, I use the term loosely, gentleman in Florida who was a pastor and an investment counselor and a tax guy, regulation isn't going to help you. Regulation will, maybe get the most egregious cases, but that is a hallmark of something terrible that's going to happen.
So anytime you go to somebody, maybe one of the things to look for is if they don't give you the other side of these things, maybe that's another opportunity for you to run. Like if they never give you the negative, then they're probably not legit, right?
Well, right. And if you say to someone, when was your last down year and what happened? And it's like, well, I've never had a down year. You're dealing with Julius Caesar and the old Abbott and Costello. This is fraud, people. Get away.
All right, so how do you pick somebody, quickly, because we only got like 2 minutes left, how do you pick somebody that you can trust?
Okay, some of the things you got to look at. If they want custody of your assets and they're not showing you what's there and you have no control over it, get away from that. Make sure that your securities are marketable. Make sure that they are in something where it is publicly traded. Make sure you can look them up. And the other thing is if they start throwing terms around that you don't understand, ask what those terms mean. If they're throwing too many terms, they are not legitimate. One thing you got to remember about fraudsters, a lot of them kind of get like Richard Nixon. They start believing their own lies to the point where they themselves aren't trying to take you over. They actually believe what they're telling you is correct.
Interesting. Are you better off going to a big company like a company like yours, or are you better off going to Joe's financial?
Well, we're small, and the thing is, I think it's different strokes for different folks. The thing you really got to pay attention to is, are my assets secure, and can I deal with these people, and are they doing what I want for them to do? One of the big things of fraudsters is that it's like, well, you're only getting X, and we can get you X plus Y plus Z. But the thing is, Finance 101, the risk-reward conundrum, which is the more reward that's out there, even legitimately, the greater the risk. So think about what it is that you want to do, and think about what you want to have at the end of the day, and stay within that boundary, and you'll do a whole lot better.
Tony, I always find myself, even just if it's a small bit, a little bit smarter after talking to you. Just a little bit.
What can I tell you? Things are rough out here.
Anthony D'Angelo, Fortress Fiduciary Company, a Paragon company. So here's the thing. Somewhere along the line, we got to go over, some of these things for people, like what to look for. Like you said, everything has a positive, or everything has a negative to it, right? So whether it's an annuity or this or an insurance. So somewhere along the line, maybe we're going to have to get into some of those. How about that?
How about next week?
All right, sounds good. We'll set it up.
Pal. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony.
Sure, bye.
All right, bud. There he is. I think he's pretty good. He's good on the air. Interesting stuff. So Tony D'Angelo, appreciate him. Fortress Fiduciary Company. And side note, they're not paying, nor are we paying them to be on the air. It's just He's a friend of Bob Lazari, so it's the Italian half hour. And they're buddies. They were on a sports show together, and he's an interesting guy with a lot of interesting insights. So anyway, Bob Lazari in less than 2 minutes. Stick around.
Amazing.